Kristen, and you're listening to Podcast and Amplify, a podcast for women entrepreneurs who want to amplify their voice and brand through podcasting and grow a wildly successful business. I'm the executive producer and host of 2 shows and an entrepreneur, and I love helping women grow their visibility, mindset, and business to the next level. Each week, I share tips on how to launch and leverage your podcast, and I'm bringing on the very best business leaders to give you advice on how to build your business empire. Let's amplify your voice and business. Welcome back to Podcast and Amplify. I'm your host, Kristen, and today I'm going to talk about how to book guests for your podcast. So the podcast booking process is one of my favorite parts about podcasting. I just love researching guests, potential guests, reaching out to them, meeting new people. It kind of feels a little bit like a scavenger hunt where you're looking for someone that is obviously super knowledgeable in their area of expertise, and they're also passionate about their mission, and you just really vibe with them. So you're kind of looking for someone that you want to promote to your community. You want to have them on the show because you're excited about the value that they'll bring and share. And I'm sharing their voice and their content with other people. And so it's really important to me that I'm using my platform in a way that's an opportunity for me to just really meet interesting people, have great conversations, and then who knows where the relationship will go. So as you can see, I really love this process, and I'm actually in the process right now. So I think that's why it's very top of mind for me. I'm reaching out to people, I'm doing my research, and just looking for the right fit for my podcast, because I will be taking a break in January and February to record my episodes. So I'm doing a little bit of the legwork now so that I can hit 2022, hit the ground running, and just start it off with some great conversations, which is the other favorite part of podcasting for me. But I wanted to let you know where I was in my process and share a little bit of that with you in terms of how I go about looking for guests. So now you have a sense of how I feel about booking guests. Let's talk a little bit about my approach. So I want to dive into 3 ways that you can book guests for your podcast, because a lot of people, I think, feel intimidated about reaching out and asking people to come on their show. I think that's one of the pieces of podcasting that really gives people pause, thinking of, I'm going to have to reach out to total strangers. Like, how do I even find people who want to talk to me and come on my show? So I just want to start out and address that first of all. So I know a lot of people are nervous about reaching out to people to ask them to be on their show, but actually there are a lot of people who want to be on podcasts. For a lot of people, it's like their bucket list goal. And typically what I've found overwhelmingly to be the case is that people are flattered when you ask them to be on your show. So it's really nothing to feel nervous about, and it's generally a really positive experience. And this is also a good time for me to remind you that it's really important not to be tied to the outcome. So whether or not the person says yes or no to being on your podcast, that's really not within your control. So I like to approach it as I send the message out, I put it out there, and then I just let go. And whatever happens, happens. I feel like if they say yes, it means it was the right fit and they were meant to be on my show. And if not, then that's perfectly okay. There are a ton of other people out there, and maybe the time isn't now, but it could be later if it's someone that I really wanted to speak with. So definitely don't take any no's personally. We're all busy, and 99% of the time, that's why people say no, is because they're busy, like we all are. But I encourage you to just put it out there and ask the person, even if you feel a little bit nervous. I think you'll be surprised at how many yeses you get. And really, that's all you can control is what you put out there. So it's a good place to put your energy. Okay, so let's dive into the 3 ways that I use to reach out to potential guests and book them for my podcast. Network is number one. You really want to start here because these are people that have essentially already been vetted. These are people already in your community. They're trusted, and that just makes it that much easier to reach out to them. Or if you don't know them firsthand, maybe they're a secondhand connection. They may be a colleague or a former collaborator or even a friend. So think about places like LinkedIn, or if you're part of a mastermind group, these are excellent places to look for people in your community that would be a good fit. So for LinkedIn, it's very obvious what people do professionally. It's listed right under their name most of the time. So you know exactly what their experience is, their knowledge, and you can assess whether or not they would be a good fit. And then you can message them inside the platform. And then for a mastermind, masterminds are typically around a specific group of people. So, for example, if you're in a mastermind for growing your business or you're in a mastermind for coaching, then you know that there are people in there who would be a good fit to talk about those things. So, this is how I booked my first guest on my show. I looked around at my network and I thought, wow, I have a really great network. And who do I know that who knows a ton, who's well spoken, and I could just see them being a really great guest. And it's so much easier to reach out to a friend or someone that you know already, especially during the recording process. If you're new to podcasting, you'll be speaking to someone that you have some kind of connection with. So that makes that part a little bit easier. It's kind of like having training wheels on in the beginning when you reach out to your friends and colleagues. So, your network is definitely something that you want to leverage. And side note, remember that podcasting is a great way to expand your network. So, essentially, you are networking as you are podcasting, and you're just growing your network and the people that you can tap into. Okay, number 2 is social media. You definitely want to go on places like Facebook groups. Facebook groups are great because typically you are in a group that is in a specific niche. So, for example, I'm part of Facebook groups that are focused on women entrepreneurs, and my podcast is targeted to women entrepreneurs. So, I invite them on my podcast to share their tips about how to have a successful business. So, I already know that my potential guest is going to be within that group because the group is targeted. So that's just one easy way to find people within your niche on social media. Hey, explorers, we'll get back to the show in just a moment, but I wanted to take just a few seconds to invite you to the free workshop that I created. It's called The 3 Secrets to Starting Your Successful Podcast. Now, it's all about helping you to start your dream podcast so that you can share your voice and expand your business. If you want to join, just go to podcastanamplify.com. It's totally free. All right, friend, back to the show. You can also use Instagram to find people to come onto my show. I think it's a great way to get a sense of someone and who they know and what they're about. They're typically linking their website and any of their blogs or their podcast episodes. So it's a great way to kind of get a lot of information about someone in one space. So I found some really great guests through Instagram. So let's take a minute to talk about how to reach out to people in an authentic way, because there's a lot of talk about people sliding into other people's DMs and it just having this negative connotation. And I think that really only comes up when you are reaching out to someone and it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like you want to get to know them genuinely and you're just trying to sell to them. And I think that's where it feels uncomfortable. But I have no problem with people coming to me and introducing themselves and trying to make a genuine connection. So here's how I approach it. I reach out to the person, I introduce myself, I share a little bit about the podcast, and I let them know why I think they would be a good fit. I make sure to reference something that they've written or posted, or something about their mission statement, a blog post, maybe a podcast that they've been on, something that ties back to why it is that I think they would be a good fit for the show. And I have never had someone tell me like they didn't appreciate me reaching out, because you're reaching out with an offer. You're providing a valuable opportunity to them. So it's very unlikely that you'll get a negative response. But you also do have to be clear about who you are, why you're reaching out, and why you are reaching out to them specifically. That way they know that you're not just someone spamming them and wanting something from them. So that's how I would suggest reaching out on any of these platforms, because there is a little bit of an art to it, and not even really an art. It's just showing up genuinely and being clear about what you want. And I think that's something that we all like and appreciate. And I also use Instagram to just simply post an invite on your stories or as a post, and let people know that you're looking for guests, and ask them to reach out to you, send you a DM if they're interested. Okay, so the third way to book a guest for your podcast is by using free groups. So there are several of them out there. Basically, you sign up with your email, and then you're part of a community of people who either have podcasts or they're interested in being on a podcast, or both. So a popular one is matchmaker.fm. Another popular one is podcastguests.com. So let me share my experience with podcastguests.com. So I signed up with my email address. It put me on their email list, which is fine because they send podcast related topics that I'm interested in. They send a newsletter that talks about people who want to be guests. And they also talk about shows that are looking for guests. So you can sign up to be a guest, or you can sign up to be a show that is looking for guests. I was using it for the latter purpose, for getting guests on my show. So I submitted a description of my show, and then I was featured in their weekly email newsletter. And from that, I got my podcast in front of, I don't know, hundreds of people. And anyone who was interested was able to click on a link and fill out a form to be on my show. So then what I received was access to a Google spreadsheet, and it would update every time someone submitted an application to be on my show. Now, this was really great because I had about 50 people apply, and all I had to do was basically copy and paste the description that I had for my show and send it to podcastguest.com. And they sent that out to their entire email list. And then I got 50, I think it's grown since I've last checked it. But then I was able to just access this spreadsheet super easy. And in the spreadsheet, it has names, emails, website, why the person wants to be on the show. So it captures all that information. And then I could scan it and reach out to the people that I thought was a good fit. And all of this was free. So I felt like it was worth my time. It was like minimal effort, but high return. So there are several other groups like this. This is just the one that I've used recently. And I would recommend checking them out because they do make it easy for you to find guests. Okay, so those are 3 ways that I found to be an effective way to book guests for my show. Let me know if any of these ways work for you, which one you like best, which one you're so excited about trying. Send me a message on Instagram. I'd love to know. And remember to have fun with it. This is such a fun process, a great way to meet really cool, interesting, talented people. So that's all I have for today. Next week, I will be doing a roundup of my first season of the podcast and letting you know what I learned, what maybe my favorite shows were, episodes were, favorite guests, just a little behind the scenes I'll be sharing on next week's episode to wrap up season 1. I appreciate you for listening, and I'll see you next week. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe so you don't miss a show. And rating and reviewing this podcast is the best way to help support us. Always remember, your voice and what you have to offer is needed in the world. Until next week, take care.